Good evening and welcome to Survivors Voices first panel session. So this is the first session of 5. We're going to be going live at 7:30 every single Wednesday during the consultation. Each different week we will have a different topic, and tonight's is about introducing Survivors Voices, how it came about, what restorative justice actually is and what a consultation is. So we have 3 guests tonight. We have Ashley Scotland from Thriving Survivors and also representing a survivor herself. We've got Isobel, who is also from Survivors Voices. We've got Gemma Fraser, Improvement Lead at Community Justice Scotland. You'll also see Jackie Forbes on the screen. So Jackie's from Drawn to Learn, and she's a graphic recorder. So she's doing different parts of this consultation, doing some artwork to represent what's going on, and we'll use that at the end in the report. And then finally, we've got Victoria, who keeps us all right and keeps us, the admin, going, and she's also going to be letting me know any questions that you put in the comments during the live. So what we'll do is we'll go through all our speakers. If you keep your comments in, we'll keep them to the end and then we'll put them to the panel. So first of all, Ashley, why don't you tell us about Survivors Voices, how it came about and what the purpose of it is?
Sure. So Survivors Voices really came about because we were at, I suppose we were at a point where discussing, and as senior leaders we were having a conversation around the topic of restorative justice and what that might look like. And the whole Survivors Voices, the whole platform, the whole idea for this consultation all came from choice being taken away. Somebody took away a choice of hundreds of people, thousands of people that will flow through that centre in weeks and months and the years that follow. So during that meeting, I had went from being a senior leader to being a survivor. I had went back into that survival instinct. That fire in my belly was well and truly lit, and I suppose I just left that meeting feeling like I had to know more. So I went away, I did my research, I got in touch with Pamela Stott at the Scottish Government, who co-wrote the Restorative Justice Action Plan, and I invited her along to a meeting at the next survivors meeting, if you like, a month later. But that was a couple of days before, and Pam agreed to come to that meeting, and she brought along Gemma and Rachel as well, and really I think that whole meeting just changed my entire perception. You'll see what I mean when you hear Gemma speak. She can be quite captivating. Yeah, talk about throwing you on the spot, but she started to open up everybody's eyes, I think, in that meeting, that this was perhaps something that might well work. And off the back of that, was then invited to a restorative justice stakeholder group meeting, and it was really interesting to be part of that conversation, and just to actually be offered a chance to sit around a table where you can make change happen and you can really influence things. Not for a second did I think what happened during that meeting would have happened and we would be here now, but that was in December. We had that meeting, and we got invited to put forward a proposal to run a national consultation to really hear the voices of survivors on the topic of restorative justice. And I jumped at the chance. We put in the proposal, I built the dream team, and here we are, less than 2.5 months later. We are here. The consultation is just about to go live on Sunday, and it's been a remarkable journey to get here. But the whole point, and to answer your question, and just in a quick nutshell, we're here because it's about choice. It should always be about survivor choice. It shouldn't come down to being my choice or the choice of another senior leader or anybody else's choice, Isabel's choice, Gemma's choice. It should be the choice of the survivor alone. And I think that's what drives me. What is the point in being in a position where you're able to affect change if you don't use it to help spread that voice? So here I am, standing up for not just myself, but the hundreds and the thousands of people that would have flowed through that centre. I'm here to offer choice.
Totally right. that explains the name that's been chosen as well. So you chose Survivors' Voices. So I guess that represents the fact that you are giving a voice to survivors. It's aptly named. So moving on to yourself, Isabel. So you are the Public Involvement Coordinator for Survivors' Voices. Can you tell us what your role is?
Yes, I can. My role is I was headhunted by Ashley. In my previous role, I was the coordinator for the area where Ashley was hosting the meeting that she just described, and that meeting had a lead for restorative justice as at the national level. There was a lead in that area. So Ashley invited me to take part in this and to take on this new role. So I'm just at the point of thinking about retiring, and so I just thought, I'm going to do that, and I did. I retired, and I thought, I've never been busier in my entire life, I need to tell you. But it's been a joy. It's been an absolute joy. So my job has been to really reach out to people. The media campaign was created by yourself, Heather, and people came, and we were aiming for 30 people, and we got 28 people who came forward to engage. I think I got the best job on the Dream Team, because I get to do everything that I love to do every single day, just constant emails and speaking to people about their experiences, phone calls, emails. It's been an absolute privilege and a joy to be doing it. So that's my role. So anybody out there, my email address is all over everything. If you hear anything today that you want to engage with, get in touch with me. If you give me your phone number, I will phone you. Just email me, I'll email you back. It's not too late to engage, but the main engagement will be in completing the consultation when it's live. Is that enough information, Heather?
That'll do for just now. So Gemma, obviously you are an expert in restorative justice. So could you maybe explain to everyone what actually is restorative justice for people who don't know what it is?
Yeah, I don't know if I would go with expert. That's a lot of pressure. I enjoy it, but it's a lot of pressure. I'm the policy lead for restorative justice, and with Community Justice Scotland and the delivery of the action plan in that by 2023 in Scotland. So I suppose it starts with everything that's already been said. Restorative justice is about maintaining the community in the crime that happens to them. For me, crime is two separate things. So what we see going through the courts is about process and restoring social norm and taking something that's happened between two people away from them to quite a degree, putting it through that process, and it comes out the other end and you're handed a decision that has been made based on the information and evidence and how that crime fits into certain boxes and aspects of justice. What you're given is or isn't justice, depending on how you feel. And that's a really important point, that justice is hugely personal. And to get meaningful justice takes voice, and the voice of those most affected. And restorative justice is about thinking about how we can put that back into the system for people who wish to access it when they are ready to do that. So restorative justice is a process where a facilitator who is trained and can support a process takes two individuals who have been harmed by a crime, because it is about addressing harm, and allows the impact of that harm to be discussed between those parties and an agreement to be reached. So you'll have the facilitator taking part in a really, really robust assessment, thorough, with experts and information, and both parties involved. In this case, usually always instigated by the individual who's experienced the harm, and they will always be first to speak in a process. So that process then is taken forward into what we call a conference, where those two individuals can put forward what it is that they need to say, particularly about the impact, what it's meant to them and what that experience has really felt like, which again can be a little bit voiceless in a court, depending on how that's approached. So putting that back in and allowing an outcome which is agreed by both parties, but really in the best interest of the person who's experienced the harm, to be achieved, and that then can be signed off and agreed by everybody, and hopefully will give them justice that is a little bit more meaningful in respect of the harm. I suppose the only last point to make on that is that harm is the thing that isn't taken away. And I think I understand that more and more being around people like Ashley and, you know, the survivors of these types of crime. you know, your crime is one thing, the harm is almost the infection of that. That's the bit that runs through you, runs into your family, your community, and remains with you. And if you don't address that in the way you would treat an infection, we will continue to spread that, and that harm remains in communities and sort of fosters more crime, more experience, and more offences. So it is in part about a little bit, I suppose, around how we reduce further offending to a degree, but much more, I think, about achieving health outcomes for people who experience it.
Good description, thank you. Ashley, this is all about the consultation. What is a consultation, and what effectively are you asking for people to do?
I suppose, to put it very, very simply, a consultation is simply just a questionnaire. Do you know, it's a quick, simple questionnaire that we're looking for people to fill in, so as we can really understand their point of view and really capture those voices from the people that really matter. Like Gemma said, that it's the survivors who've faced so much harm that it is important that we hear that and we understand how it is impacting on them and how we can start to heal beyond that. And I think the more we've went through this restorative justice learning process, and it's been steep over the past few weeks, the more you see the need for that healing to take place in whatever shape that might be. So I'm really excited to see the results of this consultation and see what comes on the back of it. But essentially, our consultation in particular, is a simple questionnaire that we're looking for you to fill in, so as that we can really understand your point of view and whether you agree with restorative justice or not. It's really us trying to fully understand what that would look like for you and how that would impact you if it was made available or if it wasn't available on the other hand as well. So
yeah. So this questionnaire that people are filling in, the purpose in this is to find out if survivors would or would not be interested in restorative justice. But there'll be other questions around it, but this is the main purpose. Am I right in saying that you're not looking for a particular outcome here? It might be the answer is yes, it might be the answer is no, and this is about giving people the voice to give you an answer?
That's right. And I think that's really important to capture as well, is that currently there is no restorative justice service available for survivors like myself within that community. There is no service available. So this consultation will feed directly into what those services look like. And again, this process, this learning curve that we went on, we've recognised the need to actually go into those questions in more detail, because the methodologies for delivering restorative justice services could look very different for different groups of people who've been affected by different types of crime. So that was something that we recognised and we've now built into that consultation, is really trying to fully understand all the different points of view from all the different so yeah, we're just really looking to capture all of that information.
Perfect. And originally this is based at violent abuse or sexual abuse? Yep.
Yeah, that's right. So whilst everybody's views are important, at the moment, this is the voices that haven't been heard, but probably the voices that need to be heard the most. So I think that's why we specifically focused on survivors of domestic and sexual abuse. But like I say, that's a very wide umbrella and covers an awful lot of us. So we will look to break that down further within it. But yeah, we think we've done that in a very safe way, so as that we're making sure people are safe and feel safe when filling in this consultation, but we've also ensured that there's a certain level of support there as well. So Thriving Survivors will step right into that supporting organisation to make sure that if anybody is filling this consultation in and they feel affected by it, or who knows, they might just stop filling it in, but they might also feel like they could use that extra support. So Thriving Survivors doors are open and we are here to support, as with other organisations who I'm sure will help in the distribution of this consultation, will also offer support to the people that they're encouraged to fill this form in. So.
Perfect, thank you. So, Ashley and Isabel, I'll come to you first. What has been the process so far? So we know that the consultation goes live on Sunday. The questionnaire goes out to everybody, and that's going to be open for 1 month for people to fill in. And we'll put, if you follow the social, be able to see where to find it and how to fill that in. But can you give us just a really quick overview as to how you've got to where we are now? So Isabel, can you start with that?
Yes, I will. It's been the process, you know, in some ways, yes, the consultation is about the questionnaire, but the consultation started as soon as we started getting survivors into our focus groups, because they're the people that actually looked at the questionnaire and the awareness sessions. We shouldn't lose sight that we're providing a lot of awareness sessions on restorative justice, and they looked at both the awareness session and the questionnaire itself. And as a result of their input to that, we did that, and actually we had to do 2 focus groups because there was so much interest and so much discussion about it, we couldn't conclude it in one. And as a result of their input, the questions were altered, and the awareness session was altered to reflect their input to it. And actually there were several emerging themes from those focus groups that we've actually set up Zoom chats that have allowed people to come in, and those Zoom chats are open to anyone else who wants to come along. Just now they're not closed sessions, and we had the first of those last night and another 2 in the planning, but it's been a very involved, we are being led by the survivors, we're not leading the survivors. And there was a range of people we had people from the north of Scotland, from the islands, from every area in Scotland involved in this, and that was through the social media campaign. It reached out so far, and people coming in and engaging, which was really joyous to see. The first meeting I think we went through, and we covered every corner of Scotland in terms of people that had engaged in it. I think, well, I'll pass over to Ashley there to see if she's getting to answer on that.
Ashley, what's the panel so far? Oh, you're on mute.
I think you've been
Where?
technical issues. So, in terms of the panels, this is our very first panel session. We had originally planned 30 Q&As where you would have had a different person every day, and so what we had originally started with has changed quite dramatically, and here we are now sat in panel sessions. So what we're looking to do is really open up the discussion and actually start having a conversation around restorative justice, because I think a lot of people just don't know what it is or what the benefits of it could be. I also believe that people have got a lot of misconceptions in terms of restorative justice, and I think if we can just open up the conversation, then we can at least start to process some of the questions and start to get some answers to them. If we don't have the conversation, if we continue to avoid it, then we'll never know what the questions are, we'll never have any answers. So we need to actually be able to have these conversations. So the whole idea of the panel is to bring together, moving forward, we'll do themes. So I think the next theme is restorative justice after sexual abuse, and that's next week. And we've got an amazing lineup for next week. I cannot wait to watch it live. So really looking forward to it, but we steered away from the idea of a debate because we don't want this to be a debate. We want it to be a discussion. We want end results and we want outcomes. We don't want loggerheads and stalemates. We want to actually move forward with this and to make sure that the end outcome, when a service for restorative justice becomes available for survivors, that it's done safely and it's done properly and it's done with us all singing from the same page. And that's got to start with this consultation. So these panel sessions, the idea behind them is really to just help people fully understand it, getting together with a survivor who'll give you one point of view, then you've got an expert, you know, somebody who has a background in working in restorative justice. We've got an amazing line of experts as well. They're just incredible. So I can't wait to see what comes from all of those. And then we've got our organisations. So survivor, expert, organisations, let's have the conversation. So we'll make sure that each of those themes actually focuses in on restorative justice after sexual abuse, restorative justice after domestic violence. We'll maybe look to, on the last session, bring more sort of both sides together and actually have a different sort of conversation. So yeah, it's still evolving at the moment, but those panelists are almost all in place. We're still looking for some organisations to come forward and get involved in the conversation. So if you're watching and you want to be involved, then please get in touch, contact Isabel. Isabel will take care of you and make sure that we get you on that list. But yeah, the panels, I think, open up a whole new possibility for us to actually have a conversation in a very safe, structured way that's got positive outcomes and actions on the back of it.
Obviously, it's a difficult subject. The whole restorative justice comes after, you know, an experience that nobody wants to have. So the consultation, when people fill in this questionnaire, it is confidential for them. But what barriers or worries do you think that maybe survivors watching might feel or be worried about at the moment in regards to restorative justice?
I think, I suppose it's fair to say that quite rightly within any crime, there will be nervousness and concern and worries about taking part in something that puts you in front of a person who committed harm. And in the case of people who have experienced harm through domestic and sexual abuse, that is, you know, an incredibly huge worry. And, you know, the potential for trauma, the potential to re-victimize, the potential to feel a whole host of things will always be there. But that isn't untrue of our court system, I suppose. So probably what I would say is that being a part of a discussion like this, where you are from the outset going to be involved in the design of something that you have the ability to shape now in terms of how it is approached, how it looks, how we understand those feelings that are held, how we develop processes and put things in place that address that, and how we can better support people before, after, and during any process is the best way to get round barriers and to understand that. I think that at this stage it is really clear. There's nothing about restorative justice that will ever be mandatory. There's nothing about a restorative justice process that means you must take part or that you'll be forced into a position to say things or be part of things that you don't want to. We are blessed with a massive amount of expertise in this area. Restorative justice is a field that is not devoid of research, and particularly not when it comes to a lot of experience in this particular area from all across the world. We are able to draw on a whole host of things that will help us design something really effective, but it will not be effective without a really good voice that comes from people who potentially could get something from it. But that's exactly right. If you don't get something from it, if it's not for you, whether it's you yourself that decides that, whether it's experts that support you, whether it's friends, communities that believe it's not the right time, all of that can be examined as part of a process, and it is completely confidential. The other thing is, if you're listening to this now and thinking it's something you're ready for tomorrow and change your mind, you can be ready for it again. You can be ready for it anytime. It's not like a court process in that. It umbrellas a process because it is about harm. And restorative justice doesn't dictate when you should feel ready to address harm. And that's probably something people need to understand about. All we want to do is put it on the table and hear what people have to say about it, whether that's positive or negative. And if it isn't for you, that's absolutely within your gift to say so.
Fantastic, thank you so much. And I think you're right from the start of this. It was brought up about the whole misconceptions and myths around restorative justice. On that, we have created 10 videos that address the 10 main myths or questions or queries that people have around restorative justice. And they were answered by Alva, who has gone through restorative justice herself. So they're all on the YouTube and on socials. So I would urge anyone to go and look at them. It does answer a lot of questions. And it was a complete education for myself as well, coming into this having not worked within the industry at all. So I think we've got a question here from Facebook. So, can restorative justice include children and young people in terms of the domestic abuse context? Ashley, do you want to answer this one?
Okay, so I'm no expert in this field, but I think what I will say is there is restorative justice services available for young people at the moment, and I'm sure Gemma can explain a wee bit more on that. There has been a lot of conversation about this within the focus group in terms of the children who are affected, what sort of restorative process is available for them. And again, at this moment in time, we don't actually know because there isn't a service in Scotland. So I think that's the important thing to keep coming back to. We're at a truly unique point where all of these questions will really feed in to this end consultation and the recommendations that go forward. But I'll pass to Gemma, I think, to come in on that. Yeah.
Okay, I think the question itself is slightly ambiguous. I'll try and answer it in two different ways. One is whether or not we would look at children and young people as a victim of that crime in terms of a sort of a perpetrator and person harmed, person experiences harm type, or whether or not we mean inclusion of them in a sort of restorative justice process that perhaps involves their parents or a situation that they have been in where that crime has been committed. So there's two different ways to look at it, I guess. One will be part of a consultation where we talk about young people and what restorative justice can look like. And from a sort of Scottish-wide perspective, the Centre for Youth and Criminal Justice are looking at how to do that and make sure that we are supported properly with an understanding of what young people would need across the restorative justice piece rather than simply even just in this crime type. And the other part of that is probably something we have heard being discussed a lot in focus groups around this. What does support look like that surrounds a restorative justice process for two people who take part in it? And it may well be that there has to be a bigger consideration to how families and communities that are directly, I suppose, surrounding that crime, that incident, that series of issues are supported. But I think that actually is a bigger question for justice in general, sometimes in support, and how we better align that to individuals who feel that kind of harm.
Okay. Yes, it's a sensitive subject. Any requirement for it, particularly children. Isabel, have you got anything to add to that?
Yeah, I was just going to make the point that it actually came up last night in our focus group that we held last night, which was what was very clear was that it's not a replacement for mediation services, and that those mediation services will still be around. And some of the restorative justice in terms of youth, it's to do with youth offending as opposed to youth victims or youth survivors. So I think that's a big debate that might open up as a result of this, but I don't think there's anything in the current action plan that would be leading towards that. Gemma, am I right?
No, but I might add that there has been a lot of restorative justice work undertaken across Scotland within schools. So restorative approaches in general to address issues across education. And there might be some learning within that that gives us some more of a context of how to work in those types of situations.
Yep, and that's something that's very significant in terms of restorative practices. That's what we were discussing last night, because at the request of survivors, we were looking at restorative practices without conviction. So it was that was what the debate was on last night, and one of the first emerging themes from the original focus group.
Thank you. Another question. So, can this system be part of the restorative justice too if people think they were let down by them?
Let down by justice services?
Yeah.
That's a question, probably. Yeah, that's a wee bit open for debate at the moment, I think, in terms of where restorative justice will be applied in this context across the system. I'm aware there have obviously been discussions about the use of restorative justice where a criminal conviction perhaps hasn't gone ahead, but obviously that doesn't mean that there isn't a harm there to be addressed. That is something we're in the process nationally of looking at how we set out sort of rules and standards against what practice will look like going forward. And I think that's a question for that wider piece about how will we ensure restorative justice can be safely offered in those situations, and if it can. But that probably applies to a number of different crime types and areas that we need to consider. We have in the past in Scotland and other crime types offered restorative justice as part of a diversion from prosecution. Now, that we very rarely see domestic abuse cases, for example, within that field, so it maybe perhaps wouldn't apply so much to that. But there have been incidents where obviously that has been accepted to be suitable for a diversion, and restorative justice has been offered at that time, which is an earlier stage in the system. Restorative approaches and practices for children and young people also available quite heavily as part of early and effective intervention. So again, without a case having then gone through a criminal process. But we have to be very careful to ensure that nothing that's done in a restorative justice process places any impact on what happens in court for individuals. So that is quite an important legal discussion to have.
Anything else to add to that question?
Sorry, did you come to me there, Heather?
Yeah, just see if you had anything else you wanted to add to that.
No, I think Gemma so eloquently covered it there for us. But again, it brings me back to that point in that nothing's available right now. So everything that this consultation is seeking to achieve will feed directly into that and will shape what that looks like. But I think just to pick up on what Gemma said, if these services are being delivered, they need to be delivered safely, and that cannot be stressed highly enough, especially when we're starting to look at the more sensitive crimes such as domestic and sexual abuse. So I think it's only too important to stress that it needs to be specialist facilitators, and I think that'll be something that comes off the back of the consultation. Although I don't want to start reading too far into what I think people are going to say, because I might be totally surprised.
That's the last of our questions. So thank you so much, Isabel, Ashley, Gemma, Victoria, and Jackie. Just for everybody still watching, so these panel sessions are weekly. Next week we have a fantastic panel, and the theme, as Ashley said, is restorative justice after sexual abuse and violence. And we have Vicky Taylor, who's a survivor. We've got Estelle Zinstag, who's an expert on the subject, and Pam Hunter from the organisation Say Women. So that will be a fantastic discussion to have. Consultation, as advised, it goes live this Sunday. It'll be on the website. It'll also be on all social media links every day. So obviously going back to what Ashley said, it is confidential. If you are filling it in, you do feel any effects, you need help or support, please get in touch. Everywhere you find the consultation, you will find contact details for Isabel. We also have our information sessions. So these are 3 times a week. And this is basically anybody can book on, be it an organisation, an individual, or if you're just interested in more information, it's a Zoom session 3 times a week. You can just go on and learn about restorative justice and what the consultation is. Again, it's all over social, it's on Eventbrite, and we put a reminder up every day just to let you know when the next one is. To find out more information, social media, whatever platform you're on is the best place to be. LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and there is the Thriving Survivors website as well. And finally, the misconceptions and myths, definitely have a look over them on our YouTube channel. It answers an awful lot of questions before you even get to the consultation. So I think that's us for tonight. I'm looking forward to next week's one. If anyone's got anything else to add just now.
Thank you very much.
All, and we'll all see you next week.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Heather.
Thank you.